welcome back to the Hawkins Do You Copy podcast. My name is Lauren.
And my name is Emily, and in this podcast we talk about all things Stranger Things.
Oh, that had a bit of a song.
Oh, what's that?
I said you had a bit of a song then. That was fun.
Did I? Oh, I mean, well, we're 25 episodes in, we might as well make it fancy.
There we go.
Okay, so today is a bit of a wild one. So we've been posting on Tumblr a lot recently, actually,
Yes.
and one of the asks we got asked, if you're not aware of Tumblr, it's the messaging service, but whatever. So one of the questions we got asked was, what is the most outlandish theory you have heard? And so me decided absolutely to implicate myself in this because somewhere circa 2018, I believe, I'm still scrolling to find my original post, but there we go. I came up with this theory about Mike Wheeler not being exactly, not exactly what we see at face value.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that today.
Which
so
is
enjoy.
Yeah.
It's quite the theory.
It is. Before we get into the theory, remember that you can catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher at Hawkins Do You Copy, and also on our social medias, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, which is Hawkins Podcast, and also YouTube, which is Hawkins Do You Copy, and Tumblr, which is hawkinsdoyoukopy.tumblr.com. That's the first time I did it, and I did it all.
Yeah, there you go. You get used to it. It's a weird routine. I think we forget like how much goes into just saying all those things. It's a stress.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Well done. It's 9 o'clock at night as well, and I remembered that. So like,
I mean, well done. You even did where we actually are in the same order.
I did.
Yeah,
I listen.
You listen. There we go. So this theory is, I'm going to coin the dark Mike theory, simply because it's a dark Mike theory.
Yeah.
I think I wish I had a better name
No,
than that, but
I think that fits. And it's definitely different. Like, it definitely is like a darker a darker
it's
Mike
different.
theory. No, but like in a good way. I remember when you first told me about this and I was like, this makes perfect sense. And it is a dark Mike theory, which is different to the Mike that we know. So I don't know, season 3 might
definitely. It kind of flips everything we kind of know about Mike on its head. So I should say that when this was written, it was very much pre-season 3. I don't think we really had any set photos.
No, I don't think.
Point. No, not at all. So a lot of this we had nothing to speculate on. It was purely middle of hiatus, me very bored, sitting there and getting a bit ahead of myself. So let's begin. Let's begin. So the idea of this started, I think we've actually spoken about it very, very briefly. And actually the main focus we spoke about very briefly is that the idea of D&D kind of being very obviously very central to the show, but being very central to the show. Because one of the things we obviously know is that the D&D campaigns for some reason always seem to line up with what actually happens.
Yeah.
We saw it in season 1. We didn't really see a lot of D&D in season 2, but I'm sure it would have been the same. And then season 3, arguably, then it's exactly the same thing, only it's Will that does it this time. But it's Mike's set, I believe.
Yeah.
Whatever. Anyway, yeah. So obviously Mike is kind of the dungeon master of the party. So he's the one that writes all the campaigns. And so the idea is that somehow Mike is unknowingly controlling how things are progressing through the series.
Yeah.
Bit outlandish.
I like it though. Like I definitely think, and I know we've spoken about this a little bit before, We actually spoke about it in our last podcast where we spoke about science camp, in the sense that D&D is so integral to the plot of the show, and obviously it is that they really love playing D&D, and like it's something which is a big part to all of them. But it also is really, like you said, the stories are the same, and that's quite interesting that it would sort of emulate that. We said about how there's that theory that it's going to get to the end of season 5, which we are presuming is the final season, and it will be all a campaign, and it's going to go back to that moment of them sat in the basement. And I won't go into that because we've spoken about that a lot, but that idea of that, which is not too far-fetched, I think, to imagine the idea that it is something which has kind of played itself out as a D&D campaign, which I think definitely comes under that. And like you said, Mike is always the dungeon master, and whether you take the comics as completely canon content or if you take them sort of with a pinch of salt, one of the big things in the D&D comic, which is not finished yet at the time of us filming this, and also the science camp comics, which have just finished, is that there is a big focus on Mike is the DM all the time, and the other characters are like, I don't do this, you do this, and this isn't my thing, this is Mike's thing. And it's that sort of hesitance to want to do it themselves, and be like, no, Mike has to do it, this is, I don't know how to do this, I don't know how Mike does it. And there's such a big focus on him and how he sort of creates these campaigns, and even using D&D terms for the monsters that we face, you know, like the Demogorgon in the show is an actual Demogorgon, like that's not what an actual Demogorgon from D&D looks like, but they call it a Demogorgon. We don't actually know what the names of the villains in Stranger Things are called, because they
actually, that's a real point.
We don't know. They've just been given D&D names. Yeah.
I never thought of that. We actually do not.
We don't know. No, we don't know what
actually are.
No, we don't know what an actual Demogorgon is. It's called a Demogorgon, but the actual, if you're watching on YouTube, I'll put up a picture of what the D&D Demogorgon looks like, but it's not the Demogorgon from the show. So
no, like even in season 2 with the Mind Flayer, even before that, I'm going to presume it wasn't actually called the Shadow Monster.
No.
And like even that's a name that Will gave to it.
Yeah, from the Veil of Shadows.
Know what that actually is.
Yeah, and it's from the Veil of Shadows, which is a realm.
Well, there you go.
But they do this with everything. Like, I know this isn't D&D, but Mirkwood is called Mirkwood because they made it up. Like, they have made up so many aspects of Hawkins, or put aspects of Hawkins within a fictional reality.
Even the Upside Down, like, it isn't actually called the Upside Down. Well, I think it is now, but for the longest time it was called the Nether. Nether.
Yeah, so they make that up, and most of the time it's Mike that is the one that makes it up. Aside from Will.
And aside from the Mindflex, I believe it's Dustin, isn't it? He looks through the book.
Yes, it is. No, you're right. Yes, it is.
Apart from that. But on the whole...
it's Mike.
It's Mike. Trust, as I said, this theory is old. It's outlandish. We're rolling with it because we were like, actually, we could probably make a podcast out of it. And there we go. We're all
it was what we're doing
ourselves today. Anyway, I digress. Let's continue. So, why Mike, you may be asking? So, the argument for this at first was that he's very central to all the characters within the show. Like, arguably, we could say that he's the lead boy, or at least was for season 1 and arguably 2.
Yeah.
I know that it was very much a Will focus, but Mike was always there. Well, I mean, think about, like, obviously he's the de facto leader of the party. He has the links to Elle, he has the links to Will, and to be honest, throughout season 1, 2, and 3 now, actually, I feel like as an audience we are following him.
Yeah.
Like, I know obviously we have the different subplots, but in general, the seasons open and close with him, which to me seems like he's meant to be the lead, essentially. I know that a lot of people see that obviously Elle, the main character, but he feels like he's the lead for some reason.
Well, him being the dungeon master suggests that as well, but also he's sort of the one. He was friends with Will before he was friends with anyone else, and then he when in season 1, when Dustin says about best friends, you know, I came in late, and you were friends with them first, it's almost like they were all Mike's friends, so then they all came together to become each other's friends, and Mike is the one that takes Elle in and looks after Elle and won't go and tell his parents, or you know, or he's going to, and then he realizes I can't do this and doesn't want to listen, and he's the one that sort of has the main driving force to want to find Will. And it's not that Dustin and Lucas don't want to find Will, but he's more like, we have to go and do this.
I will give it to Lucas though. In fairness to Lucas, he is very much like, if you're going to be so focused on her, that I'm going to go and do it all myself. So we'll give that to Lucas. He also is. But I think we've discussed Mike and Lucas before, that they kind of are each other's counterpart. Like they're so similar, I think, in a sense, but in slightly different directions.
Mike's family is also the only family who have a lot of their own plot lines as well. So like, I mean, and the Byers, but other than that, like Mr. and Mrs. Sinclair don't even have first names. Erica
Henderson is comic relief.
Claudia Henderson is comic relief, and we don't ever have a storyline which follows Claudia Henderson outside of her own house when Dustin is involved. Erica only started to get more screen time in season 3. And I guess like we don't see Ted as much, but like Karen has entire subplots. Even Holly has been like a discussion topic, and does Holly have some kind of tie somehow because of what she saw in season 1 in the Byers house? And then obviously Nancy has a big storyline, and I know obviously Jonathan does, and so does Joyce, but out of, you know, but obviously Will has these massive ties to everything anyway, so that makes sense. But out of like Dustin, Lucas and Mike, why it makes sense that Will's family has more screen time, but why Mike's rather than Dustin's or Lucas's?
Exactly.
Why does Mike's whole family get first named, like whole subplots, like all of it?
What is interesting as well, in the World's Turned Upside Down book, the only 2 families it actually re-mentions are the Byers and the Wheelers, and there's comparisons throughout between the 2, and I think we actually will probably talk about this, like we'll talk about the parents and stuff like that on a podcast at another point. Because I think it was something that was sent to us actually on Tumblr as well, but I think it's going to be something that will be worth actually talking about, because I don't think there's more that we can say rather than actually write it down in a text post. So please look out for that. So I think it is really interesting that has kind of been set in place from the very beginning. So long story short, it feels like the Wheelers and Mike are kind of like our main family, I guess,
and the Hoppers.
That's what it feels like to me anyway. Forgetting about the Byers for the moment. I can't believe I even said that. It's because it's a Mike podcast today. We've gone back to my roots.
I said Hoppers, and you said forget about the Byers. Are we already comparing? Are we already conjoining them? I guess technically they are now. I guess Els.
That's what I thought we were doing. I thought we were just going the Byer Hoppers.
Yeah, no, obviously, yeah.
Thing now. Yeah.
Like my little like dropper heart just ignored that, and I was still seeing them as 2 separate households. Look at that. I'm disappointed in myself.
So am I.
Yeah. But yeah, the Byer Hopper family, that's understandable. That makes its own sense. Whereas why the Wheelers other than the Sinclairs or the Hendersons? It doesn't make any sense.
So obviously we said about the links to it, so obviously Elle, Will, and actually Mike's main plots in season 1, 2, and 3 are so focused around them.
Yeah.
Like season 1, it's, as you said, like it's finding Will, and then it's looking after Elle and keeping her safe. In season 2, it's finding out what's going on with Will and calling Elle every night until Will nearly kills everyone in a hospital.
Yeah.
And then it's season 3, we're then back to Elle.
Yeah.
So he's at the center of all these 3 storylines. And actually, even if you look at the posters, I think he's pretty central in everyone as well.
Yeah, he is.
Like he's pretty much in the center. And apart from season 3, when I think he's no, he is.
It's him and Elle. It's him and Elle.
It's him and Elle. Yeah. So actually, yeah. So he's very, very central to all their plots. And what we noticed as well, actually, is that there are moments that this is where it came from, really. There are things he says that arguably give information to what could be the antagonists. So one headcanon that I have, and I think I've spoken about this a few times, is that I kind of love the idea that the reason the Mind Flayer knew to use Will as a spy is because Mike told him.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am obsessed with that idea. If I have any headcanons to do with the show, it is that one.
Yeah.
So obviously, we all know what moment I'm talking about, but there's a moment when they're sitting in Will's room. I can't remember what's just happened. Have they just found Hopper? Or
no, because after Hopper,
no, yeah,
they're in the hospital, so it must be before.
I think it's that episode though, but it might be at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, it's when he wakes up. I can see him wake up on the floor in the sleeping bag, and he has like the thing over his head.
Yeah, it's either when he just wakes up or he's just gone and knocked on the door from school and was like, "Is this about the shadow monster?"
Yeah,
and speaking to Joyce. It's one of those moments. And there's a moment, obviously, when they're sitting on the bed and Will's kind of talking through it, and he's like, I can't, it's like a feeling, and it's I just know all the time, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And Mike says something about, well, maybe you can spy back, and something like that. And I don't think spying had been mentioned before that, or something like that. Maybe you can be like a super spy. You can know what he's doing all the time. And Will makes a comment. Will, or nickname terms. Will makes a comment. Will makes a comment about how what if he spies back? And Mike said, "We won't let him," which complete outlandish theory that I won't let him could mean, or we won't let him could mean various different things. And we'll go from there. And also, we were just talking as well about there's that moment in season 3 when he knows that Max needs to get away from the door.
I find this really weird. Yeah. Like, I don't know. I think I might have mentioned this like when I watched season 3. Like, because I did a whole watch Shalong vlog. Cheeky plug on my YouTube channel, Run on the Road. And I'm sure, I don't know if I kept it in the end, but I am sure I remember thinking or saying that's weird, because Will doesn't say anything to him. Will doesn't say she needs to get away, or like the Mind Flayer, or he's like, he doesn't say anything. Mike just looks at him. They just share a look.
Will does say he's activated, but then even then Mike still looks before that.
Yeah, he still figures it out early.
Yeah,
he still knows before he should arguably know. Because then he has that get away from the door, and it's quiet.
Yeah.
And then they're like, what? And then he shouts. Like, it's a weird moment because it's not quite like. And also, what's weird about that whole scene is, how did Mike know that he's activated meant he'd be able to break the door down? Because
Yeah, that's a point,
if
actually.
Mike knows that he was not strong enough to withhold those restraints, why did he put him in there in the first place?
And why did they not all get away?
But this is the thing.
Leave
So
him in the sauna to heat up.
Yeah, this is the thing. Why did if Mike if all Will has to say is he's activated and just share a look, why is that enough for Mike to be like, he's going to break this door down? Why does Mike know that that's what he's going to do? Because that's not enough information for my liking.
No.
That, for me, sounds a bit suspicious, that he knows what's going to happen before it happens. Because surely you'd come up with different restraints if you thought he'd be able to break the restraint you had.
Arguably as well, you could, I mean, this is definitely a reach, but if we're thinking in this theory, it also makes sense. The whole kind of plot line with Elle and not wanting her to do things, and that kind of thing as well, because if he is all dark, why would he want her to do anything? I'm also aware that that is, as I said, completely, we're talking in the realm of outlandish theory. That is definitely not the case.
And also, we did talk about the idea that Mike doesn't know he's doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Which it can apply in that sense. I don't think Mike would know. Like, if something is going on, he's not going to, on some conscious level, know this is happening. And this is something we've spoken about with Victor Krill, actually, and even with Elle, that the idea that something is going on and they don't know it's going on, and it's kind of really out of their control.
Yeah, we've briefly touched on that on our Tumblr, actually, in a response to Elle in season 4, is that the bite the bite that she gets at the end of season 3, is that gonna be something where it plays a part in her life in season 4, but slowly and without her fully knowing, which is an interesting theory. But like I said, we went on that on our Tumblr, so you can go look at that on there. But yeah, the idea that he's doing it slightly subconsciously, so he's making the decisions thinking that that's a decision, but it's almost like there's two parts of him in there, the part that has this sort of dark element and the part that wants to help, and it's sort of almost as if like one comes out and then the other one can come out, and it's quite a tricky sort of situation, because he never directly does anything that puts anyone in danger.
No.
But it's just weird comments and knowing things before he should know them, and like you said, sort of giving information to the mind flayer. And like, he came up with the sauna test. He was the one that came up with that. He took the lead on that and made that whole situation a thing. So then he does that, and then admits a few hours later that it's not going to be strong enough.
Well, there we go.
Weird.
Absolutely go.
It's weird.
Yeah, there's just a few things. Even like in season 1, I know it's Will that says the Demogorgon it got me line, but
the light flickers.
It was still, it was his campaign. He was the one that put the Demogorgon in the campaign. And
is it symbolic? Is it like the Demogorgon it got me, but it's symbolic for Mike's campaign got him? Mike's campaign got him in the game, so the Demogorgon gets him in real life. And we've said a lot about how the light flickers there, and I have a theory, I stand by my theory, that Will has powers that have something to do with electricity, and I do want to do a whole podcast on that, because I think that's quite a big thing, or has a lot of potential. But what if it was never Will that made the light flicker? What if it was the part of the Demogorgon that was in Mike? But like,
it sounds crazy. But
like this is what we do. We were asked about outlandish theories, So we are providing. I guess the discussion is, where did it come from? It makes
That
sense
would
that it
be
would
the
be
only
in
thing.
where, yeah, it makes sense that it could be in L. It makes sense that it could be in Will. Why Mike?
Well, I think this actually, I've only just thought of this. This was something to be interesting then with the Hellfire Club.
Yes, I was thinking
season
this.
4.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Obviously,
yes.
We're gonna presume that it's gonna be like the height of the Satanic Panic, and that will be raised on some level. And we've spoken about this on previous podcasts. Well, we spoke over one podcast, and it's kind of cropped up in little pieces throughout. But obviously, the idea that it was seen as this evil game, and by playing D&D, you were summoning demons, and it was a danger to your kids and everything like that, which we know is, well, as far as we know, is definitely not true.
We have a whole podcast on that. It's really interesting. It was like a real thing of the 1980s, and like people genuinely thought that playing D&D meant that you were evil incarnate. So if you are interested in hearing about the Satanic Panic of the 1980s, we have a whole podcast on it. But genuinely, like a real thing, and there's a whole organization that's like against D&D.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to be interested to see if that is in it in some manner of things. You know, Dustin is part of it. It'd be interesting to know if other members of the party are also involved. That would be really nice, and I would love some real confirmation on that matter.
I would like real confirmation on that matter as well, so that we can legally talk about it. That would be really good. That would be really good.
We can legally talk about what?
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Neither do I.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Nothing. Anyway,
no, absolutely not.
Right, moving swiftly on.
Speaking of D&D,
Speaking of D&D, this is where the theory got a bit deep, because we didn't exactly just stop. I'm bringing you into this.
No, but this is like the whole thing. Like I remember doing, like you started talking about this theory. I fully remember it. And what I love about this as well is that this was like early-ish days of our friendship. Like,
yeah.
And I just love that we've known each other for probably like a year at this point, but not not the way we know each other now. And I just love that one of the first things we like dove into was this whole theory. And I remember you talking about it, and then I remember like going on this absolute deep dive of this particular D&D theory and what this meant. So you can fully bring me into this, because I remember where I was like literally sat on my bed scribbling notes into a notebook. Like,
why on earth did you not like tap out as soon as I've got a theory? Mike Wheeler's evil. Like, you know,
blocked and reported.
Yeah. Anyway, right, where were we? Yes, so we went into D&D lore.
Yes.
Anti-paladin, dark paladin, Mike Wheeler. So obviously Mike plays paladin within the show, and that is lawful good, and essentially the idea that you have to go through your life as a paladin in a certain way, and you can never stray from your path. I believe you have to go from cleric to paladin.
I think
something like that. Which of course we know that I think cleric is in general true neutral, because it can also go either way, which we've also spoken about with Will, which is very interesting. And but another time, it's Mike's time to shine.
There's also a whole podcast about there was a whole podcast. We did a whole podcast on their D&D characteristics, which was really fun, because I started playing D&D at the end of last year. So this is really exciting to me. So you can go listen to that podcast. Listen to all of our podcasts is basically the point of this podcast.
This is just a plug
for every episode we've ever done.
But like this kind of I can't say the word. You know what I mean? The
Culmination. It's the culmination.
That's it.
Of those points.
This is where all the podcasts come to die. This one right here. Anyway, so yeah, a paladin has to be lawful good and it has to follow that path, which led us very interestingly then to the idea then that there is an anti-paladin or a dark paladin,
which is a real thing.
And
It's a real thing within D&D.
Yeah, it is. So this one does the flip of it, where it is lawful evil, and I think it's kind of similar to lawful good, that you know what's right and you follow that. But lawful evil, and I think actually the Mind Flayer is lawful evil.
Yes, like Mind Flayer is lawful evil.
Yeah, they're both. It's both the idea that they're doing what they think is right.
Yeah.
But for completely different reasons.
Yeah.
And
for a completely different outcome.
Exactly. I think it was lawful evil was more for your own gain.
Yeah.
And it's kind of that more selfish, I'm doing this because I have to, and I'm doing it because I know it's right, but it's for me. Whereas lawful good is more kind of something that I'm doing this because I have to, because it's right and it's good for me, but also the greater good.
Greater good, yeah.
Yeah. So the anti-paladin. See, I remember completely like out of context. I remember explaining this to one of the people at my youth theatre, because that's what I do. I teach youth theatre, and then I go into the group of 13 to 14-year-olds and to say to them, "Hi, I've had a bit too much spare time, and I've been thinking about how Mike Wheel is evil." And if so, they thought it was a really good theory. So I feel like if I can impress 13 to 14-year-olds, I can impress absolutely anyone. A hard demographic.
No, but genuinely, like, there's also a tangent, but I also used to teach, and I taught from like a huge range of kids, but the teenagers were always the best ones, because like I said, whenever they talk about Stranger Things, you'd be like, this is an entirely different like audience that I'm used to talking to about Stranger Things. Like, give me your opinions, please. Like, this is really interesting. And having those discussions were really, really great. My like GCSE group that I used to teach, you know, I did actually do teaching, but I remember one of the kids one time for about 20 minutes, he was just like, so I finished season 3, and here's all my thoughts. And yeah, it was literally about 20 minutes of just season 3 discussion. So I feel that that's a mood. And I just would like to clarify that we can do our jobs. We just like to make it fun by talking about Stranger Things at the same time.
Because of course, well, what else would you do?
The
idea of the anti-paladin was, and I just need to flip my iPad because the notes I've decided to write it in the most awkward way and written upwards. So they essentially put on like a facade and paint themselves as this hero, but actually they're not.
No. And putting that on around people that they know.
Yeah.
Which is yeah.
Like we could, if we take that season 2 example again, when Mike is very much like, maybe you can become a super spy and you can spy on them. That's kind of doing that there. That would be kind of more selfish if you are believing the theory that it's kind of selfish for his own gains.
Yeah.
And there we go. But also, this is something that we just discovered, which turns the theory completely, however, on its head. And that is the idea that most anti-paladins are abducted as children.
Or so abducted as children, like during a raid, after a raid, and then they basically are raised by an anti-paladin order, and that is so traumatic that then they continue to act in such a way. Or I found this really interesting in the sense that some anti-paladins who hail from particularly corrupt societies are forced into anti-paladin order by their parents to maintain the family reputation. Now, very wheelery. very
Oh yeah, a little bit.
very Wheelery.
Hmm.
Like if you think about it, we
Yeah.
see like their voting preferences. Like Karen is very, oh, her son's missing, let's go give Joyce a casserole. Nancy says about how they stay in a loveless marriage for like reputation's sake. And very, very Wheelery.
I mean, that's I don't have a point from that because I was talking about the abducted by children
I'm
point. But
so
actually,
sorry.
yes.
I'm so sorry.
I don't know where to go from here. Anyway, but no, yeah, I think I'll get back to that in a second. That is very Wheelery. The idea of the abducted from children thing is very interesting if we look at then L.
Yeah.
And could we then argue then that once again, outlandish theory time, she's kind of like the opposite of Mike in a sense then. Oh, I thought of another one. I've just thought of another one. We'll get to in a second.
So this is in the context, so like what you're saying is like in the context of if we pretend that Mike isn't the anti-paladin just for a minute, but
Yeah.
Elle is. So forget what
Yeah.
we've been talking about for half an hour and just pretend right now that like Mike isn't the anti-paladin and Elle is also works. Yes.
Yeah, it works in that sense then.
Yeah.
And that also, of course, gives light to the idea that is Elle going to be like the evil within the show, and which is a really popular theory. Exactly, the bite. And I've got another point then to add to that because we mentioned earlier we're bringing him up. We're finally bringing him up. 38 minutes in.
38 minutes in.
We've got a will theory.
Will bias.
Will bias. So obviously, you to become a paladin, you have to be a cleric first. And there are many Will L parallels throughout the show, and I like the I see the face. This is a good theory, and the idea that they kind of work obviously in parallel to one another, where one is one place, the other is the other, etc., etc. There was also a very interesting moment on Beyond Strange Things season 2 when I believe I can't remember who it was. Someone said, "Oh, maybe Will's like the evil L." Or something like that, and the Duffers had absolutely no comment and just stayed completely silent.
Yeah. So,
and I will leave it at that.
I really, really think that they are going to be parallels of each other. And I think I've definitely said this to you before. I think I've mentioned this on the podcast maybe once. But I not too long ago read Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials for the first time. I started to read it a few years ago and didn't finish it just because it wasn't like my absolute fave. And then they did the TV show, and Lin-Manuel Miranda is one of my favorite people on this planet, and he is in the TV show. So I gave the books another go, and the books are the book. I enjoyed them a lot more this time around, and they've been out for a really long time now, so I am gonna spoil His Dark Materials just for a minute, because I have to for this theory, because like this is where the theory comes from. So I am sorry, but maybe just mute it for like a minute or two if you don't want to hear the His Dark Material spoilers. But Lyra and Will at the end of the third book end up one in one universe, like with the door, and then like the only way to stop the like each sort of universe essentially getting and connecting and going wrong is to be on either side and lock the door from their side, knowing that they will never be able to see the other one ever again because they have had to lock their door from each side. And it is heartbreaking. And I have completely convinced myself that the end of Stranger Things season 5 is going to be Elle in the Upside Down and Will in Hawkins, and the only way they can close that gate is if one of them is in the Upside Down and one of them is in the non-upside down, the right side up. And that hurts me so much, but the concept that they work in parallels and that they are each other's like opposite, especially because they never fully interact. And it's like season 1 we have loads of Elle, and the second Will's back, Elle's gone, and then season 2 it's mostly Will, and then Elle's back, but they don't really interact, and then season 3 they barely speak to each other. But now they're like adopted siblings. So like they have to be around each other all the time, and I just think weird stuff's going to go down with that. I can't see, they're just very intertwined in very peculiar ways. So yeah, him being like a different version, I can definitely see it, and the theory really hurts me.
Oh, absolutely. But it pains. But also, actually bringing Mike Wheeler back into his own podcast episode again. Yeah. The Dolphin could still even work with those two. That, as we kind of know throughout, that they've been pulled and separated a lot. I think pretty much. I mean, I know they're reunited in season 2, but there is still something keeping them apart.
He loses them in every season. He loses her in every season.
Yeah, exactly. So I wouldn't be surprised if, from some level, then it's still applied in season 5. In some way, I don't know. I just can't see it ending happily. I think.
Maybe we're just really cynical. Like maybe the series is actually going to be like a really nice end, and we're just being really cynical about this whole thing. I think we've just been hurt.
So and so is going to die. They're going to be trapped.
Yeah, they're going to be trapped in the upside down. Like this thing. Maybe we are just being really cynical, and actually it's going to be lovely. But I've said it before, and I'll say it again.
Maybe we are overanalyzing so much.
But I mean,
that's exactly what we're
doing. I've had no heart since the 26th of April 2019, when I had to watch a 3-hour film that resulted in the death of my comfort character, since I was 13 years old. And then what I thought was going to be his wedding was then his funeral. So I had to go through that. So since then, I don't trust anything. I do not trust anything. So I don't think this show is going to end happily, because everything wants to hurt me always. So there you go.
Like, arguably, season 3 is the happy ending they all deserve, in like a really tragic way. Because like the buyers are gone, they are going to kind of be it's a bittersweet thing.
Yeah.
But like you have that moment. This might be an over analysis, but I think looking actually at can't say that because I don't think we're legally allowed to say that they're available online. But if you look at the show itself, with the filming and Elle's kind of driving away, she's got that sun on her face.
Yeah.
Which obviously from like it could have just been a complete coincidence and really good timing on their part.
Yeah.
But that kind of, it's sun, it symbolizes a kind of I'm moving on, I'm happy kind of thing. And obviously I know that we have the shot where they're all quite unhappy as the buyers have now left, they're all driving on, but that would still be kind of a sense of life moves on. So that kind of is that kind of happy ending. And I just think it's gonna get worse for everyone. Anyway, back to Mike, because I don't think we have much more we can say. Really, and ultimately then, like, because obviously this was made pre-season 3, so I then had in my mind this big idea that Mike was going to be a bit of a target then, because he's got so many connections to everyone, that there's so much going on, that I couldn't see a way that he wouldn't be taking it back to death, I guess, then one of the potential big shock deaths within the show.
And he wasn't touched.
No, he wasn't, was he? I mean, he got knocked out once, but still, not really. No. There we go. Once again, that could of course be we can't kill off our main characters yet.
Yes, but yeah.
But there we go. I just would have thought with everything in season 3, or everything from season 1 and 2 rather, in season 3, he would have been in trouble. And I get why Elle was in season 3 because she closed the gate.
Yeah.
But then I feel like the Mind Flayer knows who Mike is because Will spoke through the Mind Flayer. I was like, that's my friend Mike. And in such a weird tone.
Oh yeah, oh my god, that was like absolutely the Mind Flayer saying that. And it's really weird to me that the Mind Flayer knew like Mike's name, but like no one else's.
No. And I think that's been kind of argued by some people saying that he was around Will the most throughout that season. But didn't know.
May I introduce you to Joyce Byers, ladies and gentlemen?
I mean, in fairness, though,
he does say my mum
reluctantly, but also she wasn't asked in that moment.
No,
it was very much Mike and Hopper, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was Mike and Hopper. So I think there's the argument that because he was around the most for that it was just something that he picked up and was like, okay, I know who this person is. This must be a friend.
Yeah.
And his name is Mike, that kind of thing, which makes sense. But also, I don't want to look at it like that. And I want to look at it for the sake of an outlandish theory, look at it from the perspective, there is a reason that he's being kept alive. And that, my podcast friends, is my outlandish theory about how Mike Wheeler is evil.
And potentially doesn't know it yet.
Yeah.
And how that theory could definitely tie in to season 4.
It absolutely could not, but
only if theoretically we had seen things, but for legal purposes we haven't seen anything, so it might not tie into season 4, but theoretically,
if things were seen, it could potentially tie in.
Emily, we predicted Will the Wise. Like we think things are outlandish and then they come true. So we predicted the purple. Like we said it would be a purple cape with a pointy hat with stars. Like we predicted that goddamn outfit, and it was right.
Somehow I feel this might be wrong. Somehow.
Catch us in the year 2025 when season 4 is finally released.
There we go. I mean, we'll see. I think there's elements of it that, I say it's outlandish, but I'm low-key proud of myself for coming up with it.
It's a good theory. I like it a lot.
It is.
I mean, I wouldn't have added to it over these years and discussed it with you if I didn't think it had some merit of discussion. So it's cool. It's a good one.
And I think there's elements of it that, it can still apply to things, as I said, with Victor Krill, arguably with potential elf storylines in season 4. So maybe I picked up something from somewhere. Who knows? That's what I'll be telling myself when I'm a tiny bit correct.
Yeah.
But there we go.
We'd love to hear thoughts on this. This would be a really good discussion point. So come follow us on our social medias and hang out with us there, and please discuss with us. But
also absolutely be kind.
Yeah. Hey, your theory sucks.
It was a few years ago. It was pre-lockdown, so I don't even have an excuse.
It was pre-lockdown. This was this was normal life was a pure thing. So here we are after wrapping up this video and episode. We said goodbye. I got all of the Instagram social media conversation right, so I'm not saying it again, but here we are approximately an hour after we finished filming, with the entire theory.
We found it after an entirety thing of scrolling. Literally for the entire episode, I'm just scrolling up. Right at the last minute, I of course find it. So this conversation was from January, the 22nd of January 2018. So at that point, we'd been friends like a month.
Well, yeah, because the thing with me and Emily's friendship is we won't get to like too much into it, but we met in, what was it, like May 2017, and we were like acquaintances, and then at the end of December 2017, like that same year, I popped up on Twitter with I have a spare Funko Pop, do you want it? And that was sort of the real proper start, I would say, of our friendship. So yeah, so we hadn't even been friends a month. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I will include the screenshots of bits of the conversation.
Oh my gosh, it's like a snapshot into our past.
I know, look at that.
Cute.
So yeah, so we'll do that. So literally, yeah, we hadn't been talking a lot. It hadn't even been a month since it was like, okay, DMs are a thing we can do.
Yeah. So it started with, we were kind of talking about Dustin a little bit, and we're like, well, maybe Dustin has this connection thing, which we're getting into
where did that come from?
So we said because he's the intelligent one, essentially. Because, you know, as you do, we just pop that in there.
They're all smart though. Evil. Like, they're all smart.
I don't even know. But what's also interesting is that you said, I'd love him to whack out this amazing scientific theory in season 3. That would be amazing. Let's screenshot that as well.
Did I predict Cerebro? Did I predict the Russian transmission?
Well, there we go. There we absolutely go. And then you were like, I'm theorizing about Dustin, how we didn't grow up in Hawkins and moved thereafter. And then I chime in with, I have a solid theory for Mike. And you were like, what's the Mike theory? And this was it. So I opened with simply, this could be a bit fanficky, as we are now fully aware. It's quite fanficky. I guess these things could be because you consider him the lead kid, as we've said. And said, so first of all, Mike is the dungeon master, right? He's to control everything that happens in their games, meaning that he technically set the Demogorgon on Will, and Will tells Mike what he rolled, and after what happened later that night, the Demogorgon got him. And then continue. I said the Mike L thing. First of all, was it a coincidence that he and his friends found her? Probably not. They've got that connection throughout. He calls her 353 days, and he can feel that she's there. And there's this theory of the L and the Demogorgon having connection. So if we tie it all together, there we go. I said, and also a lot of things happen around Mike. So everyone calls out for him on the Upside Down. We forgot to mention that an hour ago, though. But they do. I remember that now. I was very proud of realizing that.
They do.
Will recognizes Mike, but doesn't know Hopper or his mom's boyfriend, who he really got along with.
R.I.P.
And I said, and also, there's a funny story behind the rubbish weapons that Mike holds. So, for example, they're given like guns and bats, and yet Mike picks up a candlestick.
Yes, so it's like he doesn't want to actually fight.
No, there you go. Which, I mean, of course, I think now we know that it's simply they wanted to give him something to hold, but deep dive, he never properly fights it. And you were like, oh wow, imagine what a twist. Wouldn't it be, I don't know why you're speaking like this in my voice,
so
but
dramatic.
You're like, wouldn't it be a plot twist? You turn out to have this massive connection this entire time, and like maybe it's not a good connection. Well, if there's something in the game that they play that sets up in real life, and I was like, I wish I never thought of it because I can't unsee it. Like the full drama, capital letters, conversations were. I said, right, it really would be. I said, if we think back to the sacrifice theory we said a while back, we had a sacrifice theory another time, another
a while
episode.
back. When was this?
2 weeks ago, we had a sacrifice theory. It could kind of tie into that. Good. Oh, okay. I think it's the idea that I said probably about Mike dying. For someone at the time, I was very much like, Mike's my favorite character. I would defend Mike with my life. And I was like, yeah, he's going to die. And we said it could tie into the idea that he at the end says goodbye, Elle. And then I dramatically said, oh, my heart, because, whatever. And then this kind of fits at the end of the game in season 1 too. The creature's dead, and it might be interesting to look at the characters they gave themselves as well. And I quoted Urban Dictionary, the reliable source. I said that if we take this, so that what the paladin is, and they are riding, they're devoted to riding is ridding. They are devoted to kindness and ridding the universe of evil. They're religious, have a extremely strict honor code, and a soft spot for children and animals. In combat, a paladin without a cause is almost impossible to defeat. Paladins fear nothing, for evil fears them. A paladin with a cause is almost impossible to defeat. I said that as well. And then also an article in July 1980, I told you this theory was deep. July 1980, issue 39 of Dragon magazine introduced a non-player character which is the opposite of the paladin, which is the anti-paladin. And it says the anti-paladin represents everything that is mean, low, and despicable in the human race. And you said, raise your hand if you can hear Dustin explaining this to Hopper and Steve.
No, but I still can. I can still hear that, absolutely.
Yeah. And then you said, I can see obviously how much they enjoy this game, how much the Duffers enjoy it. I can see how they link it to the show, so it wouldn't surprise me. And said especially that they made the point in season 2 to get Mike to say which role all the characters had. And he did do that.
Yeah.
And I said, and it was obviously to get Max to go away, but he's obviously very much like, no, she doesn't have a role. Like, this doesn't happen. Like, there is no Zoomer. There's no such thing as a Zoomer, because it doesn't fit with his rhetoric of how things have to work. And then you said, I'm trying to see if there's a way to defeat the anti-paladin if it involves a mage. But I don't think we ever found it because we never actually spoke about it. And then you said also Dart ran away when Mike held him. Yeah.
Look at
then
me.
I was like, oh my god. I was like,
2018
oh my god,
me.
imagine. But, he did. It said it was specifically Mike. I want them to go down the route too. I'd love them to go down this really, really unexpected route. They need to shake things up big next season. Even if it was that Mike was good paladin, something switched makes it anti-paladin. I said there's something also about if the paladin does something wrong, he has to confer with the cleric. And you said in capital letters, that's Will. And I just go, yeah, it is. And you were like, it'd be so interesting. So why haven't they hired us as writers yet? I was like, we'll just act the writers. The Duffers will love us.
We literally still say that though. Like, I just genuinely think we should be taken on as like consultants for
the show. And I think the final point, from what I can find, because I think after that we kind of just were like, we're thinking about this all the time, was that I said, also, if we want to go really meta, every breath you take is an interesting song to analyze.
Yeah, it is.
Which obviously we know as the Mind Flayer kind of looking over them in the hall, and I'm presuming that it's from the Mind Flayer's perspective, but also the fact that they dance to every breath, they dance to every breath you take.
Yeah.
And a lot of people analyze the lyrics at certain points for anyway, and it's just
Every Breath You Take is a weird song.
Oh, it is.
It's a creepy song.
It's a stalker song, isn't it?
It's like, yeah, literally, yeah.
Yeah, and that is our Mike theory.
The blood.
Oh yes, and the blood. With the Mike knows that it's attracted by blood, and this is something that actually he shouldn't know
at that point.
There is no way he should know that, because he wouldn't have known it from Will, and even then, with Will going missing, there was no blood, even if you'd overheard that.
Yeah,
he couldn't have known it from Barb.
No,
and he just knows but it's blood that draws it near.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the Mike theory.
So now back to Past Us, who perfectly and flawlessly wrapped up this episode.
Yeah.
We had been like proper friends for not even a year. We're talking like 6 months.
And yet you stuck around. Anyway,
Yeah.
thank you for listening.
Yeah, to episode 25.
25 of the Hawkins. Yeah. Episode 25 of the Hawkins Do You Copy podcast. Where can you catch us? You get to it a second time.
Yes, you can catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Hawkins Podcast, and also on YouTube, which is Hawkins Do You Copy, and Tumblr, which is hawkinsdoyoucopy.tumblr.com.
Yeah. Thank you for listening, everyone. And I get to say it. Over and out.
Yeah.
Hawkins, do you copy?